I keep a bunch of important dates in two files. One is events, something that happened that I want to keep, and also birthdays. And I just now realized that I missed a birthday, so why is there any point in typing in birthdays if I'm gonna miss them all? And what's the point of this file being a markdown file? Let's change that. Essentially, what I want to do, I have a function that returns weather. I use it every time that I want to go outside, so that's already good enough. So now, every time this is ran, it will also show the dates, or rather this part of it, if I'm on that date. So on the 18th of November, when I get my weather, I would also get we moved. And I'm like, oh wow, a year has passed, or whatever. Okay, so this should be pretty simple. And this is why I am not coming in with the ending solution immediately. Since this is pretty easy, or so I think, I would like to do this in the format of me actually figuring out how to do this stuff, well, live, which is, I think, is an interesting format, but only if I actually know what I'm doing 100%, and that's more or less the case here. So what we're gonna need, a regex that first of all matches the date, then this, then this, and then everything after. Okay, and also we have to have this file. We're not gonna check them separately. I use a method I'm gonna explain now in a different place as well, where I append this file onto this file and compare them all. However, important to recognize that there has to be a line, an empty line at the end of at least one of the files, or at least the one to which we append the second one. All right, let's get to writing. First of all, let's go to paths and create entries for both of these files. I do have info, however, do I do. So union log doesn't actually exist anymore. So events, this info, events.txt, and then let's actually do this a bit smarter. So yank find this and birthdays, and then we paste it. Like this. Cool. Birthdays.txt as well. Cool. Now we have the files, so we don't have to track them anywhere else other than the paths file. Now, how are we going to do this? In a class or in a function, having all the logic in a function seems a bit meh, but let's see, maybe it's actually okay, and having a class instead would be ridiculous. I'm gonna use my other library for all the random stuff that doesn't really fit in anywhere else, and call the function remind RemindDate, I guess. No parameters, there doesn't need to be any. Okay, so text will be read file, which is in paths point to file. First of all, it's going to be events. Why events? Because it already has a blank line, so we might as well. Yeah. And then we append to the text the read file of paths point to file birthdays. Cool. Now we have all of them in a single thing. Essentially how this looks is like this. Now the rejects. We might have issues with this having two numbers and a dot and this not having that. So the easy solution is to just add 2 zeros to every birthday and fill it in when I actually know the year, which is kind of excessive, or make the rejects that accounts for that, which might or might not be more difficult than I initially think. So immediately I'm thinking of a couple of things. First of all, this might be too big for just one function. But let's write the rejects for now and leave the optimization of readability for later. Okay, so the rejects is going to look something like digit, digit, then dot, digit, digit, dot, digit, digit, oh, no dot, and then this, and then anything until the end of the line. Yeah, anything. And we wrap this in a group, as well as this. So the first group is going to be the actual date, and the second group will be the text that we will display in an info. So we'll compare the first group with the date, the current date, and if it matches, then we do this. Okay. I'm seeing a bit of a rough reality. The fact that we're gonna have to get all the matches, and every time I run this, we would have to compare the current date to every single one of them. And as events grow, this is going to become more shitty as well. So I'm thinking of a lazy solution. Just having JSON instead of a text file. And I don't particularly hate that, surprisingly enough. Because if we just use JSON, then it becomes much, much easier. Okay, let's actually do that. Now it's JSON, but incorrect JSON. So I guess we do this, and then let's try to vim it out to have the solution with the least amount of repetition. So first of all, let's yes E, capital E, this, boom, boom, boom. Okay. And then we do this. Cool. So essentially, it's a single map. Another way to do it, which would be an even simpler solution, is to not use JSON at all and just have an HK map, which is literally just it. But I would have to include it and target it in a more annoying way than I would like to. So let's keep this JSON. So we do this and then select the lines at the end of the line. Boom. Okay. Cool. We got our JSON. We will never have to write to it, or rather, every time that I add a new date, I'll just type it in myself. So we don't have to worry about like formatting or anything of that nature. It will stay cool. And let's do the same thing about this file as well. So we do this, and then YSE. Cool. Before we forget, let's go to paths and change the txt to JSON. Let's reload. Okay, this doesn't look too bad actually. I do a lot of rejexing for something that doesn't actually need to be rejexed, now that I think about it, because by using JSON, what you're looking at currently is a map, and that's it. Rather than having to regex precisely and use the precise symbols to make your regex easier, none of that bullshit. Okay. So we do static. First of all, we don't need to read those files because JSON parse, I think, returns a map. I'm still thinking about how to solve the issue of this having the year and this not having the year. I really don't want to go to putting 2 zeros in between because not clearly sure how I'm gonna do that. Okay, so let's start. Events is JSON parse, and now we read file paths point to file events. That is events, and it is now a map. Do we have some sort of method to add a map to a map? Would be really nice if we could. Hold on, I think we can. And I think I've actually done it before. So I have this links map for like this thing, which opens links and pastes them as well. and I set to it by using this operator. This is also a map, and so is this. And set expects just a bunch of parameters rather than an array or a map or whatever else. But by using the asterisk, I essentially say convert this map into a bunch of separate parameters. So we do indeed have this option. Let's rename events in this case. Let's not. Or should we? Essentially, I want a name that combines events and birthdays, and I guess it does fit into that. So sure, events set birthdays, and then we once again do JSON parse read file paths points to file birthdays, and we set birthdays to events, and now events is a bigger JSON that contains both of events and birthdays, which we can just target as you would expect. Cool. I am still terrified though of the 0,0 issue. Okay, well, first of all, let's format date. It makes sense for these lines, or rather these variables, to be static. And they indeed can be, but the event set can't be. Like, I wish there was a way to just type static before anything, essentially meaning only do this once, instead of having to create a whole if check with a custom variable that does all this, which at that point doesn't even make sense to do. But these can be static, and let's make them pretty as well. Cool. So let's format date. Today is format time today, and I don't ever remember the format. I don't think it's a good idea to try to remember a bunch of random stuff like, what is this? I mean, not sure what else could make more sense, but oh well. So date of the month with leading 0. So we expect DD, and for months with leading 0. So mm, and it has a dot, I think. Yeah, then dot and DD. So month, day, and year. Which is YY, because. Cool, now we got the date that is today. Hold on. I actually needed the opposite thing. I converted, today is a number in the, like, this sort of number. I don't actually need it. Interesting. I wonder how we check if this is today. Oh, wait. Yeah, that actually makes sense. We got the actual time that is today. Wait, I'm even more stupid. No, it actually does do exactly what I expected to. And today would be 22, right? Yeah, 22:04:12, right? No, 12:04, yeah. So it does do what I expect, basically. Okay, yeah. Now, by the way, I want to explain that every time that I add a new event or birthday, by the time that I need to use this again, I would have reloaded the script. So it's being like auto-updating every time I call it doesn't need to happen. So I'd rather use my memory. Okay, so now we try to search for the key of today. Okay, so let's try events today. So it tries to find the value of this date, of today's date, which actually makes me think that it's a good idea to check for those separately. Okay, yeah, we probably should, but we'll get to that. Yeah, so we try to get, what are we trying to get? Event text, I guess. Okay, so if today actually had something, we will get this in event text. But what happens if not? Catch any, because I don't know how to catch in AHK. I don't even think it specifies what type or class of error it throws when it throws errors. You just see the error, you don't see what type of error it is. If I'm wrong, please correct me, because I would love to know. So, catch any, meaning we couldn't find it. And in that case, we don't actually need to catch it. Like, we don't need to do anything. Okay, this is starting to become easier and easier than I expect. Okay, so essentially we try to, hold on, we try to get that and an infos with the events text. So if we got it, we get an info. If we didn't, oh well. That's essentially it. Now let's remove this and actually have events and birthdays be separate. Okay, so we try to find for today in events. If we find that key, we get its value. So we get this key, it returns this. If it doesn't, it does nothing. And if we did, then I feel like we can change this to be even better. Well, you can argue if it's even better. So let's replace inside B. Okay. I guess we can also fit format time instead of today, but let's not. We don't need to. And now we can actually just redeclare today. We don't need it anymore. To format time, but without the year now. DD. Today is a string, right? Which means we don't have to reformat it. Now I understand that the method I'm going to show you right now is less readable, however it's cooler slightly. So I'm going to use it. So 1, 2, 3, 4 until the last one. And let's have an info of today for me just to understand whether I use this correctly. Now, you're probably thinking, what are you doing? That is not a thing in HK. You're not using C# or C or C++. Actually, I am. But let me show you this library. I've shown this before already. It's made by an amazing author, Descalada. I know this off the top of my head. I'm not just reading this line. Essentially, let me try to find it. Oh, here it is. But no. Yeah. Essentially, using this library, you can substring from I to J in a string, which is exactly what I'm doing. So another way of doing this would be today is substring, where today starting position is 4. Oh, well, it's implemented a bit differently in a way that I like more. But with the library, you can just specify until the last character. Maybe you can even omit it in the library as well, but I don't want to try. Yeah, essentially I like this syntax quite a bit more. Now we do the same thing, saying infos, but birthdays now, and today as well. Cool. Okay, yeah. I was thinking of making this into a class, and it ended up being much, much simpler. However, I do recognize that, like, this is not readable. Like, what am I doing here? First of all, if you don't use this library, maybe you don't have experience with C-based languages, or maybe more languages have this syntax. Maybe you don't. Maybe you just use HK. And you look at this like, what are you doing, man? What's happening? Okay, maybe you know, like C-based languages, and you're like, oh, okay, you're accessing from this to this. All right, that makes sense. If it didn't require a library, of which you don't know, which is kind of funny. And then also, you have to figure out that, oh, starting from this. But let me remove all of that worry, because it saves us about, I don't know, half a millisecond, if even. I don't like to redo stuff when I already did them. It's probably a good idea to change this to format time once again. And if you're watching, do as I say, don't do as I do, essentially. This is bad, but I think it's really cool, for close to no reason. So RemindDate, in theory at least, should be working right now. It indeed tries to do this. and it tries to do birthdays as well. Okay. Sure. It's not actually in runner, it should be in keys, where I have my Windows escape hotkey. Get weather actually returns it when this actually does the infos itself. So RemindDate. And now in theory it should work. So let's run it. I get no errors, but that is interesting. Oh, yeah, that's actually exactly what I wanted. Oh, got confused there because it showed this, and yeah, it's what I expect. Which reiterates the point, like, I wouldn't need to do this if I used format time. And actually, to eat my own words, I'll convert to format time, even though I think it's less cool, and it's technically like 0.3 milliseconds, if even slower. Once again, this is a much better practice. Use this. But that's slightly cooler. and it introduces another dependency, which is amazing. And what's the coolest thing? You don't even know what dependency it is, because it doesn't show you a function that you can clearly see or maybe search for. So say there's this like JSON, right? Or you're like, oh, okay, I need the JSON library, obviously. And to be more specific, say you're reading through my code and you're trying to understand what I'm doing and where to get dependencies. All of the libraries that I use are in my lib-v2 folder or repository, a link to which I leave in every description of my videos. So if I have a dependency, it is here, most definitely. But for the substring thing, you wouldn't fucking know. So this is a lesson in how not to code. But now let's actually check whether this works. Let's create another event, which is 22, I think 12 December. It should be December, yeah. And it's the 4th. Okay. Events works. And now we do 12.4 birthdays work. Let's reload the script and try this out. They indeed do. That's brilliant. I love that. Imagine it just works. Let's do a hack. Much better. JSON by itself is so bitchy. Like, I hate it. Like, I'll need that comma eventually. Like, shut up, right? I'm sure I'm not the only one that's annoyed by this kind of thing. And it still shows me not an error, but a warning, yeah. An inaccuracy, if you play chess. Now our JSON could. Great commit message, isn't it? So, okay, yeah. This now works exactly like I expected to. And it's gonna be amazing when in like many days, maybe even months, I decide to check on weather and I'm like, oh my god, right, this person has a birthday today. Wow. It's going to be amazing then. So if you learned anything in this video, press a like, type some comments, definitely subscribe so you don't miss more of my content, and I wish you have a good day. Goodbye.